Morning. Hey, everybody. Hey, I am so excited to be here today. Y'all know what? It's Women's History Month, and I am too pumped. So, I want to say happy Women's History Month to every single woman who is listening in today. And for all of our men who are here, guess what? Let another woman know, celebrate her. And today, I want to talk about celebrating women who tell stories. That is the theme for 2023 as we move into this month of March. And we have so many women who tell stories. So, this is going to be an open discussion should you choose, whether you are in my Facebook group, Coaching Cocktails and Conversations, and you're there live, whether you're on LinkedIn, whether you're on YouTube, whether you are right here in Clubhouse, or whether you are listening to Coaching Cocktails and Conversations, the podcast, or Breakfast with Champions, the podcast. Listen, we are everywhere. And today is this open discussion about women who tell stories. And I love a powerful acronym. And today it's about tell. It's about telling our stories. And this month is really focused around for the global theme, the international theme. It's really around women in media. And I think the way that that's applicable to us is social media. We each have social media, whether it is that we're on Instagram or any of the forums that I said before, or it is that we want to kind of pop out of our shell a little bit more. If you've been listening to me, I think whenever, if you've ever listened to me, then I'm always talking about leveraging the power of your voice. I'm always talking about how you can increase your clarity, your confidence, and your commitment. I'm always talking about how you can leap beyond where it is that you're standing right now so that now you're able to feel comfortable and confident in sharing your story. But it's not always easy. If you were here when I interviewed Danny Smith Mathis, Danny is a domestic violence survivor, and she's also an activist inside of that space. And she was talking about how now she tells her story because it's so important for other people to hear. And I want to remind us that when we share our stories, what if we thought about how it's impacting other people? Today, I want to highlight some of the women who have impacted me and some of the women who I am excited that have given me opportunities in order to share my story. So, we're doing lots and lots today. If there's a woman that you want to highlight who tells their story often, feel free to type it or feel free to hold on to it so that we can talk it anytime throughout the course of this discussion. The first is about telling your truth. Okay. Remember, I told you that the acronym today is TELL, and the first is about telling your truth. This month is all about telling our stories. So if you are watching me, the first thing I'm holding up is a book called You Are Beautiful. And I got it in the mail yesterday. It's written by Dora Maria, and she is right here with me. I met Dora Maria virtually, and she is telling her story. She's so positive, she's so outgoing, and she sits in the background oftentimes. But sometimes, when she steps all the way up with the power of her voice, look at the amazingness that comes out of this. You Are Beautiful is this book here. And as you go inside of the book, as she tells her story, she tells it through the power of affirmation. And so this is a picture of it for all of you all who are looking on. And what this one says that I opened up, it says, You are beautiful. And then it says, I am beautiful. And it's not only in English, but it's also in Spanish. And what she says on the back of her book, as she tells her story, she says, Promise me you'll always remember that you are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think, and beautiful just as you are. And again, that's translated into Spanish. But what I want to show you right here is the power of her sharing her story. And I didn't tell her in advance that I was going to be showcasing this book here today, but I want you all to see it because when you choose to put your words into the world, it is you sharing your story. And so I want to take the opportunity to be able to share how this impacted me when I got it. Okay. This is about telling your story and telling your truth. And whether it is that she decided to write this because she was affirmed or wasn't affirmed, or knows that our children continue to need affirmation, this is a book that she wrote in Spanish and English in order to make sure that she doesn't leave folks out who absolutely need to know that they are affirmed. I think she's actually getting translated in other languages too. I can't be sure. But Dora Marie, are you here? Okay. Anywho, This is a book to get. It's about celebrating your story through the power of affirmation. All right. Another book that I just received in the mail. It is called He Calls Me Smalls. And this is written to Stacy Luckett, by Stacy Luckett, who I also met virtually. Okay. And I've had the pleasure of meeting each of these authors in person as well after we met virtually. We talk about community, we talk about leaning all the way in. And one of the things that's so important is that when you meet people who you identify with, that you latch on and seek to know more. And that's so amazingly important. When I think about this book, He Calls Me Smalls, as I did with Dora Maria's book, I'm just going to open up to a random page. And what we can see is that this is a story of a father and a daughter, and the daughter is named Smalls. And it takes the reader through what they go through in this father daughter relationship. It's called He Calls Me Smalls. The story, it says, this loving book tells the story of my son Joshua and his daughter Carson's bond. It is to honor fathers who make a difference in the lives of children all across the world and to raise awareness of how essential dads are to all of us. This is Stacy telling her story. Tell your story, tell your truth. What is preventing you from leaping into the world today with your story? Dora Maria has yays right here. You can see it if you are here. And then a Facebook user says, good morning, Lolita. Good morning to you as well. This is about telling your story and then letting other people know how your story has absolutely impacted them. Tell your story, tell your truth. I mentioned Danny Smith Mathis because sometimes our stories come with so much pain and so much heartache. They come through the journey. But what I'm here to remind you is that you're still standing right here. Whether it's at work, whether it's at life, whether it's at home, this is about celebrating the fact that you have the ability to tell your story. Let's talk social media and how to use that. Oftentimes folks come to me and they say, Lolita, I just feel so vulnerable when I go to share my story and I don't know how others are going to perceive me. Your story might not be for them. And I want to remind you that when you choose to take a video, when you choose to capture a moment, when you choose to exclaim out to the mountaintops, then I want you to recognize that sometimes it's for you, but oftentimes it's for that person that has yet to tell you what your impact is. I want you to experience the greatness that is you by being able to articulate that out. This month, we're celebrating how to tell our stories. Linnell Burns says, Dora Maria is a powerhouse. Absolutely. I love that you shouted her out inside of this moment. Dr. Tangi said, I love Dora Maria's book, simple yet powerful truth statements that hit the heart. Dora Maria is on the train, so she's not able to chat with us right now. But I just want you guys to know that this month of Women's History Month is a moment to recognize women who are telling their stories. Let them know how you feel. If you are a woman who is saying inside of this moment, you know what, I know that there's bigger, better, bolder for me, I just don't know how to leap into it. I want to share with you the E, which is exclaim it from the mountaintops. And that might start with exclaiming it in your mirror. It might start with writing it down and then saying it out loud. It might start with the question of, if I was to tell my story, where would I start? What if you started where you are right now? If I was to tell my story, I would say, you know what? I'm a certified life leadership and executive coach, and I found so much amazingness in being able to pull out the greatness out of the power women that I work with every day. If I was to tell my story, I might start with that and then say, how is it that I've gotten here? If I was to start with that, I would start with, wow, how many have I impacted? And some people underestimate the one person who you know without a shadow of a doubt that you've impacted today. Who is that person that you have impacted? And I want you to tell your story. Tell somebody today. Because the only way to get comfortable is to start in the uncomfortable moments. Today is about recognizing that you have a story. And today I want to help you to bring all of that out. Dora Maria said, I'm headed to read my book to some students in the Bronx for National Read Aloud Day. That is awesome. Dora Maria actually is the number one I think children's book in Spanish. I think I saw that in Amazon the other day, which I'm so super excited about. And so telling your story sometimes might not come inside of a book yet. I want to remind you that you have the power to put it in a book so that your story could be shown all over the world, can be read all over the world, can put an impact in the world. But maybe it's this email that you are going to write today that you've been really thinking through and saying, how am I going to word that email? What we do know is that when we're writing anything, whether it's your book or whether it's anything that's going out from you, is that your name has power. We want to tell our stories. We want to exclaim it from the mountaintops, but we want to be smart about how we're doing it so that it reflects us. So sometimes what we got to do is write the email, put it in draft, and then send it later. Because sometimes when you reread that, you'll recognize that your tone or your intention doesn't match where it is that you want to go. Your tone doesn't match the intention of where you want to go. I had to rethink that right there because it didn't make a lot of sense when I said it the first time. Listen, I want to remind you, in case you're just joining on, that today we're talking about Women's History Month. We're talking about telling your stories, and we're talking about this acronym of TELL and how telling your story is not always the easiest thing to do. It sometimes makes you very vulnerable, but it can come in so many different formats, and why it is important to share your story. This Women's History Month, if you look at the global theme, it is women telling our story, but it's really to recognize this year, to recognize the past, the present, and the future about women in media and all types of media. And I posted something today. I think I posted it on my board page, but I posted something today that really talks about, I've had the pleasure of being interviewed by so many powerful women, and they not only tell their story, but they help me and other women to be able to tell their stories too. And that is powerful recognition, because sometimes as we're telling our story, we're impacting the people in the media who are interviewing us. I want you to remember this month, be intentional about telling your story, be intentional about letting someone know the power and the impact that they've had in your life. Recognize them with intention this month. Recognize a woman with intention this month. Why is this important? Oh my gosh, it's important for so many reasons. We're telling our stories through our truth. We're exclaiming it from the mountaintops, and we're leveling up because we're layering up. If you were here a couple weeks ago, I talked about this L right here: level up and layer up. We're leveling up. We're continuing to move up this echelon, but we're also layering up. We're layering up because we're pouring in power, and we're pouring in experiences and learning every single day. So we are layered with the greatness that it is that we are. We are layered with the experiences. We are layered with the training. We are layered with the amazing community that we surround as we level up. Where is it that you are going? Clarity plus confidence equals commitment. I want to pause and see if there's someone who wants to recognize a woman who has told their story. Okay. Barbara Cook James says, Grand Rising, Grand Rising, Grand Rising, celebrating all women. Absolutely. Celebrating all women. This month is about telling your story. And that last L is about loving you despite circumstances. Loving you despite circumstances. Why is that important? Because sometimes we are our toughest critics. Sometimes we have to remember that we have to love ourselves and give ourselves grace and space. Again, whether it's at work, whether it's home, or whether it's just simply in life, I want you to remember that it is worth you loving you first. Remember, I think it was last week, you guys, that we talked about uh what did we talk about last week? Loving you and choosing you. We talked about loving you and choosing you. And I feel like I did the acronym for you to love you and choose you. But C was the choose you, and how difficult sometimes that is, but how amazing it is when you choose you first. And sometimes owning your yes and respecting your no is so that you can say yes to you and choose you first. I hope this is all making sense. And by the way, I hope that this is all linking together so that you're not only pulling from this week, me talking to you, but you're pulling from so many others. It's important that we recognize the greatness of where we stand, because that is how we layer up and we level up. That is how we love ourselves and choose ourselves first. That is how we are able to exclaim it from the mountaintops. And that is how we begin telling our story and telling our truth. I love that Dora Maria put my YouTube link in there in the chat, at least on Clubhouse, in order to talk about where I am right now. I'd love for you to come on into the room, and also unapologetically telling our story. Dr. Dale Elizabeth said that unapologetically telling our story this month, you guys. This is all about being intentional with it. Take another leap. I can't tell you more and more and more that this is your time. This is your time. What if you believed it? This is your time. What if you leaped into it? This is your time. Every single week, I come to you all and I remind you that you are greatness. Every single week, I come to you and I tell you that if there are opportunities where you want to level up more, then call me. I tell you that, hey, I've created spaces and places for you. I remind you that there's women out here just doing amazingness and want to hold you up. I remind you that there's men inside of this room who are willing to hold us up and put us on platforms where we can absolutely share our story, tell our story. Today is about telling your story. And if there is not one person who is ready to say, I want to tell my story, or I want to highlight a woman who has told their story, I want to challenge you today to leap out of your comfort zone. Leap out. You've got to know, with over 1 second, over 130 people inside of this room on Clubhouse, a myriad of people who are listening back live on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, typing inside of the chats. There has got to be somebody that you want to call out. So let me start. My grandmother is 92 years old. My grandmother, Beatrice Evans, is 92 years old. And inside of these moments, she always tells her story. There's a recollection of the time when. Why is that important that we get those stories now? Because when we know our past, we can sit inside of our present and we can leap to our future. If she doesn't tell me that, how do I remember the strength that it is that I am? The strength that it is that I stand upon. If you don't tell your story, how do you know that you're not gifting the strength? You are robbing someone of the strength that you can give to them. Today, inside of your moments, I want you to think about who is it that is waiting for you in your story. I got to tell Danny, I talked about her so much today, but Danny Smith Mathis, I think, is so super powerful because she not only tells her story, she tells her story, her Black story, her corporate story. She tells her story of domestic violence, being a survivor. She tells her story of perseverance. And whether or not you can identify with any one of those, I want you to know that there's always a nugget in what somebody's saying. I talk about my father, Emmanuel A. Walker, all the time. I talk about my mother and what they instilled in me and how I talk to you all about Walker all the time, my son. I share those stories with you because I think it's so important that you can see where you can pull things, but also many of you all have given me thoughts. Hey, have you thought about this? It's so important. I forgot who I was talking to the other day, that we were talking about how oftentimes we try to do things on our own, and how we are not put on this earth to try to do anything on our own. But what if we leaned on a community to say, hey, I need some help with that? How do you tell your story if you're not getting help for how to exclaim it from the mountaintops? How you can get in front of other people to gain visibility? How you can help them to gain courage in order to walk this thing called life? Sometimes we're selfish in thinking that our story is only for us inside. Guess what? Share it. I want to remind you that today you can do that. I want to remind you that today is the opportunity for you to leap differently. I want to remind you that today is your day to be able to exclaim it. I'm working with two high school students right now to illustrate two books that I will guarantee to have by June. And it's based on my book, Can We Talk? 44 letters and poems that really talk to the inner you. So there's these 44 letters and poems, and these two high school students are illustrating. One is Dear Black Girl, and the other is Dear Anxiousness. And that's only two poems that's in a book. But what I asked them to do was take those poems, and then I'm going to make a book that is just for that poem. And I'd love for them to illustrate it. I want them to tell their story through the power of their craft. How many times are we creating opportunities for other people to share their story based on our own story? For each of us, we have platforms to be able to do that, whether it is that you're in the corporate space, the educational space, the nonprofit space, whether it is that you have a channel of social media. You have the opportunity to go live and to put people there who can tell their story or to tell your story. Are you willing to take that challenge today? Who is willing to say, guess what? This month, I will absolutely showcase another woman because this month is all about telling our stories. I hope that is you today. I hope your brain is going around like a hamster wheel, like this, wondering how can I create an opportunity to tell my story? How can I create an opportunity for another woman to tell my story? And how can I commit to that today? How can I commit to that today? We only have 10 more minutes. And so, as we look to almost wrap this up today, I want to remind you that this month is Women's History Month. I want to remind you that today is about telling your story. I want to remind you that today is about opening up a space where a woman can tell her story, or opening up a space where you can tell your story. On my podcast, Coaching Cocktails and Conversations, I plan to interview a couple of women this month on telling their stories. And some of these women don't even know yet that I'm going to ask them to be interviewed, but I've met them somewhere along my journey, and something they said, even if it was only 5 minutes of us talking, impacted me. And I only probably heard a little bit of their story, but I want to gift them the opportunity to be able to open themselves up to a broader audience so somebody else can feel what it is that I felt. I am committed to doing that this month. I'm committed to making sure that I'm highlighting someone this month because it's so important that we recognize folks for telling their story. It is not the easiest thing to do, but sometimes when we link on and create the platform for them to be able to speak in a safe environment, then that is what somebody needs today. I want to remind you that this is about telling your story. This is about telling your story. Thanks, Sai Sai. You said, I love you. I love you. Yes, I love that. Today, I talked about two books that I just received inside of the mail. The first one, as a reminder, is You Are Beautiful. This is by Dora Maria. The second one is called He Calls Me Smalls. This is by Stacy Luckett. They're both children's books. They both talk about stories of these two women and what they've experienced in their lifetime and how they absolutely want to give it back. I want to talk to you about your story and making sure you highlight that. The acronym that I left you with today is the power of tell. If you weren't here to be able to listen to that, then make sure you go back to the replay, which you can find on Breakfast with Champions podcast. You'll be able to find it on Coaching Cocktails and Conversations podcast, on Facebook, Coaching Cocktails and Conversations, Instagram, and YouTube. Right here on the replay on Clubhouse as well. You'll be able to hear that as well. Today is about telling your story. There's a couple people who are just giving checks and all of the things right here inside of the chat on Clubhouse. I appreciate each and every one of you all. Listen, this was to power you, to remind you that not only you are greatness, but your story has impact. This is to remind you that there's clarity in where it is that you're going. Wipe away the fog, move it to distractions. There's clarity on where it is that you're going. I want you to sit in your right now and even think about who has impacted me, what woman has impacted me. How have they shaped my story? And what if you reached out to them today and said, hey, guess what? I just want you to know that you've shaped who it is that I am today. And this is how. Gift somebody the power of your words inside of this moment. Camille said, so much alignment in your reminder. I appreciate that. There's so much alignment in this reminder that you are greatness. I left you guys with so many tips. I left you guys with so many strategies. I left you guys with sitting inside of this month and making it count. Intentionally sitting in this month and making it count. Make sure you reach out to a powerful woman today. Make sure you reach out to someone who might not even be expecting it. Make sure you think about how you can leverage your platform to shine a light on another woman. I host a Women's Weekend Renewal Retreat in September, and every September, the third week in September. And I would love to invite you guys. All of you all are invited. You can go to lolitawalker.com/retreats. But I do that to highlight the power of women. I do that to help you to sit inside of the power of who it is that you are and then help you layer up so you can level up. It's only 17 women that is available for the space. If you haven't got your ticket, you need to get it now. But it's all about creating spaces. How can you create a space where you can now tell your story? What parts of your story have you never told? Real quick before I end this, I remember just this past Saturday I was at a training and we did this exercise, and part of the exercise was to draw. It was in a format of a shield and a coat of arms. And in one of the parts, it was about what's your biggest accomplishment. In one of the parts, it was like, how do you describe you? In another part, we talked about respect. And then I forget what we did in the other one. But the point of me telling you this is I was sitting beside, and I had a table of women actually. And as we were talking about each of these quadrants, I'll call them, it was amazing to hear bits and pieces of their story. And when you can hear bits and pieces of their story, we remember it's because they had the courage to tell their story out loud. Now they're leveraging the place that they are. So they told their truth, a piece of their truth right inside of that moment. They exclaimed it, I'm going to say from the mountaintop, because they decided to say it out loud, right? They layered some of what they've learned so that now they can level up. Believe me, they started thinking differently as a result of hearing what everyone else shared, what we were doing inside of the training. And then they found the power in loving themselves back because they chose them. They chose to focus on them at this time. Today, the acronym was about tell. And I hope that you're taking that so that you can now know your story, craft your story. You own the narrative of this thing. And make sure you leap into the world with clarity, with confidence, and with commitment. I love that Kelly DeJoy, thank you. She said, I'm working on telling my story, Lolita. I so needed to hear this today. You are so right on when I need to hear what I need at that time. Absolutely. Sometimes we don't know we need to hear it until it's already told, which is why our stories are so important. This is Women's History Month, and I'm hoping that you take this to power yourself differently, to power yourself intently, to give you a push so that you can walk, talk, and behave differently. This month is about powering you. So I'm so excited that I was able to do that. Linnell said, let's make this month count. And if there's anybody who wants to come in these last 2 minutes, you have the opportunity. Okay. All right, you guys. I hope that you're going to
I
leverage.
couldn't get to my mic.
Okay.
Sorry. No, thanks, Lolita.
Talk to.
Good
Okay.
morning. Oh, did somebody else jump in?
No, pop on in. Pop on in.
No,
You're
Oh,
no.
okay. Sorry. Real quick. I was just saying, as I'm starting the podcast with my son, I have some people lined up, but I think I'm going to make sure that I am a conduit for people to tell their story more so than just interview style. Like, you gave me a lot to think about. So I just, as I'm growing with this, I just taking things that I hear all day and really formulating, but I want to make sure I'm one of those women. So thank you for that.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so excited. I tell you guys all the time that I find such tangibles in being able to know that something that I've said is able to power you in a different way. And from being a podcast host, what I can tell you is that it will shift and it will flow and it will ebb exactly to reach your audience. So, congratulations on that. And there was one more woman who wanted to speak before we close out.
Lolita, it's Linnell Burns. Good morning.
Good
Great
morning.
segment. And I was just jumping in to let you know that, yes, I appreciated your pause for us to jump in and just tell you how great it is to know that as women, we can elevate our voices and we don't need permission to do that. And
Mhm.
I think this is such a great reminder, Lolita. So thank you so much. And just to remind everyone, my name is Linnell Burns. I am a divorce coach helping women regain clarity and confidence for their next steps. And so just lift your voice this month, continue to shine and also believe in the ability that you have to be your greatest self. Once again, it's Linnell Burns. I'll go ahead and mute myself out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh
Thank
my
you.
goodness.
You got.
I'm gonna jump in. Thank you so much for highlighting me. I think that one of the things that I loved about you since I've met you is your light, and that you don't share your
your story with just your circle and the small network. You share it with the world. And it's intergalactic at this point. And I so appreciate you. I know that for you, this is like what your core is. Like this is how you move in the world. And I think the impact in this room, impact on everyone that you've touched, everyone's lives that you don't even know that you touched, just comes down to that. Like you're giving light and you're really touching lives. And I want you to never forget that, because there's always going to be days that you're going to think yourself and be like, oh, what is today about? But thank you for being that light for us. For some of us that have those days a lot more often than we want, and we want to keep moving forward. So thank you so much again for highlighting my book, and I hope that for those of you that have it, when you read it, you're getting affirmed as well, because it's not just about the child; it's about you making sure that you affirm yourself so that you can be stronger to affirm those around you, and that includes your elders and your senior citizens in your lives. So I just wanted to make sure I said that. So thanks, Lolita, and I can do the reset after you go.
Oh, thank you. And guess what? You have me in tears. So if you were watching on any of these platforms, you see tears coming down my eyes. I just think it's so amazing when you can highlight someone. I really don't know when the tears started or why they did, but I just think it's so amazing and beautiful to be able to lift up somebody to really showcase all their greatness. So with that, I want to just say thank you guys. You can reach me at lolitawalker.com, and I'm super excited to be here with each of you all today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank